Zoning, it means a type of atmosphere.
The generalization of different counties and sorting out the towns.
Planning the area around and see what new developments can go around town.
From a practical thing, it seems kind of fictional because it seems like mostly we create zones and then we have special exceptions in order to override the zones.
We're going to bring commercial and residential to one zoning area, where all people can enjoy and appreciate the commercial as well as resident, as long as we had a mutual respect, because that's what neighborhoods are all about, commercial and residential zoning.
The zoning?
Zoning tells you what you can build on your land and how you can use it. The term zoning is derived from drawing zones on a map that define where different land uses are or are not allowed. Some land is zoned for heavy industry, which you usually don't want next to residences. A lot of land is zoned almost exclusively for single-family detached housing. Some zones are created primarily for commercial buildings, while other zones encourage a mix of uses that add to the vitality of town centers, or that encourage the right kind of development around transit stations. And some zones are created to preserve valuable natural resources like Montgomery County's Agricultural Reserve.
Zoning determines what I can build on my property.
Hey lady, I think you're building that way too close to the property line. Zoning determines also what your neighbors can build on their property.
Zoning determines how tall buildings can be.
Zoning determines the parking requirements.
Zoning determines the type of businesses that you can have in your neighborhood, like this bookstore.
Zoning regulates the size of your lot.
Zoning sets the density for all development.
Zoning establishes which uses require a public hearing and determines how much public review is required for something to be approved.
Zoning has an enormous impact on the way places look and feel. The right zone can protect or improve a neighborhood, revitalize a business district, or create usable and attractive open space. But zones can't guarantee those things. Landowners or developers are still free to build at any density and height they choose, as long as it's within the limits set by the local zoning code. Here's a good example. This place is right next to a metro stop, and it's zoned for buildings as tall as the one that's behind me. But this developer decided to build smaller and lower. And the zoning code allows that by right. So what's here is this single-story write-in.
This is the old Safeway in Wheaton in the CBD 3 zone. It was built in 1968 according to the market conditions of the time. This is a rendering of the proposed new Safeway. It reflects current market conditions, but the zoning is the same for both buildings.
Now that we've gone over the basics of zoning, let's take a look at a common zone to illustrate how zoning works. R90 is a common single-family detached residential zone in Montgomery County. In the R90 zone, there is a required minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet with a minimum lot width of 75 feet. So your lot could be 75 feet by 120 feet, a 95-foot square, or anything larger than that. For flag lots, at the existing or proposed street line, the minimum lot width is 25 feet. Generally, building lines have to be parallel to lot lines, so you can't get too artsy. And there are setbacks, so you have to build at least 30 feet back from the street, with a minimum of 8 feet on either side of your house, although the total of the side setbacks has to add to 25, and you can't be any closer than 25 feet to the rear of the lot. The R90 zones also state that no more than 30% of the lot may be covered by buildings. The current code is not always that clear though, which is one of the reasons for the rewrite project. This is how height is defined in the R90 zone. The height must not exceed 35 feet when measured to the highest point of the roof surface regardless of roof type, or 30 feet to the mean height level between the eaves and ridge of the gable hip, mansard, or gambrel roof, subject to the following. The height must not exceed 2.5 stories, or 30 or 35 feet, depending on the method of measurement, if other lots on the same side of the street and in the same block are occupied by buildings with a height the same or less than this requirement. The height may be increased to either 3 stories or 40 feet if approved by the planning board through the site plan approval procedures. So that's how a zone works.
So why is Montgomery County revising its zoning code? Well, for one thing, the code hasn't been comprehensively rewritten since 1977, and a lot has changed in the county since then. Also, the current zoning code is 1,152 pages long. You need a team of lawyers to figure out what you can and cannot do with your property. Since 1977, the number of zones has tripled from 41 to over 120 today, with over 400 land uses specified. There are currently 12 types of office uses listed, and we probably don't need that many distinctions since office impacts are generally pretty similar.
In this discussion about zoning, it's important to remember that the zoning flows from a broader vision. In this case, the broad vision for Montgomery County evolved since the 1960s as the Wedges and Corridors Plan, which then manifests itself in more specific neighborhood-based planning studies, such as the one Council recently passed for this area called White Flint. Those local visions are translated on the ground by what the local zoning then does and how building permits are issued in conformance with those local zoning rules. We only have about 4% of the land area in Montgomery County left that can be built on for the kind of development we've seen in the past, which is tract housing going in clear fields. But we do have about 7,400 acres of surface parking lots or commercial areas on very busy streets with strip malls. And when we start to think about where the zoning rewrite can help us develop in the future, it really is surface parking and strip development. And to have these discussions, the Planning Department has had about 70 meetings in the public so far on the zoning rewrite, and lots more are coming, to gauge what Montgomery County residents are thinking about what they would like to see in areas like this. And it's an opportunity for the zoning code to look at sustainable development in the future, about taking hard asphalted surfaces and turning them into something better.
For information on how to get involved, along with up-to-date news, visit our website at www.zoningmontgomery.org.